Hello and welcome to my first ever video. My name is Kevin. I'm known on Twitter as the Quantum Prophet. I also have an incredibly popular website called ForgottenMystic.com where I post my various thoughts and ramblings about topics, mainly spirituality, but some other stuff on there. This is my first ever video, as I said, so I hope you'll forgive me for some glitches if there are any. I'm a little nervous, extremely nervous, so I don't really like the way I look or sound on video, but I do have a message that I think is pretty important to share, and so that's why I'm doing this right now. A little bit about me. My name, Quantum Prophet, on Twitter sounds kind of pretentious, but the name is actually a reflection of my personal beliefs. I consider myself a lifelong mystic. I've been studying spiritual traditions for over 30 years, a number of traditions: Christianity, Buddhism, Native American, Kabbalah, Hermeticism, you name it. I'm also a big fan and student of science. I believe very strongly in science and think it does a fantastic job of explaining the material world, how things work, what things are composed of. And I personally believe that science and spirituality go together very well. And I consider myself a mystic in the sense of some of the mystics of old, like Pythagoras, Isaac Newton, Giordano Bruno, those people who were able to have a deep sense of spirituality but also be good scientists. So Quantum Prophet is kind of a nod to that, quantum being the smallest packet of energy in quantum physics or physics, and prophet being, well, prophet. So it was also kind of a nod to the fact that I'm very much into AI and that whole field of study, and so Quantum Prophet was kind of a play on a prophet of the quantum world that was coming. So anywho, so enough about that part. I'm going to front load this video because I know people are really busy. There's probably more interesting podcasts and videos to watch on UFOs or other stuff. So I'm going to get the message part out first and then go more into the explanation. And that way, if you are here just for the message, you can get it and go. If you're interested in some of the explanation or a little bit more background to it, then I invite you to stay in and listen if you'd like to. So without further ado, I'm going to get to the message. So it's funny because just before I posted this video, someone on Twitter posted a response to a question I had, and basically they posted something to the effect of, your spirit guides are watching you. And the person who posted it wasn't someone that I consider to be extremely spiritual on Twitter. So I thought that was pretty interesting because in speaking with one of my friends on Twitter who sees things very similar to the way I do, she had gotten that same exact message through her spirit guides a couple days ago. So the timing was very coincidental, and that's a term that's very critical, I guess you could say, or very important in my life. I sometimes call it coincidental for reasons that I'll explain in another video, hopefully. But I find that coincidence and synchronicity play a huge part in my spiritual journey, and it was just too weird that just before I did this, that was posted. So, because that's kind of the message I'm going to give too. So the message just basically is that the time is nigh and judgment is upon us. And I say that kind of jokingly to lighten the message, lighten the, whatever you want to call it, heaviness of it, whatever. But the gist of it, I feel, is very true. A little background on that. First of all, I do believe very deeply in the teachings of Jesus and in Christianity as he taught it. However, I don't subscribe to all the condemning God, all the sinful whatever stuff that the Catholic or Christian churches are typically associated with. I was raised as in a loose Roman Catholic family, we'll say, and I was taught about original sin. So my mom gave birth to me when she was in the Army, and so for whatever reason, she never had me baptized. And so when I was a kid, I used to lay in bed and cry myself to sleep, convinced that I was condemned to hell no matter what I did because of something my mom had failed to do, which was get me baptized. Because in the Catholic Church, you're born with original sin, so if you're not baptized and you're under some predetermined age where you can't go to catechism yet, you just go to hell. Just go straight to hell. And when I thought about that when I was a kid, something just didn't seem right, because I thought about my dad, who didn't even go to church, and I thought, my dad wouldn't condemn me to hell for not having something done that I didn't even have the power to do. And then I thought about it further, and I thought, so basically what they're saying is every other baby on earth, except those who are baptized, is going straight to hell. All the ones in countries where they don't even have churches, all the ones in different religions and beliefs, they're all going to hell. And I started thinking to myself, that just doesn't sound like the God that I want to believe in, or that I think even makes sense, because even as a kid, I was very scientific, and just scientifically speaking, it didn't make sense. If there's an all-knowing, all-powerful entity that's supposed to be this loving God, and why in the world would he create beings and then just condemn a number of them straight to hell for having missed having something done to them by somebody else? I mean, it just didn't make any sense. So, long story short for this video, that's not the God I believe in. And when I say the judgment, I don't mean the judgment in that sense. So let me get further into that part. So, what do I mean the judgment is nigh? Well, it doesn't take too much looking around or prying or seeking these days to see that the human race is in a bit of a pickle. The climate is, every day it seems like now you read the news and it's forest fires here and heat waves here, and temperature records broken here, once in 1,000-year floods happening twice in a month here. It's pretty clear that the climate change that the people like myself predicted 30 or 40 years ago is happening. It just is. So, and it's the IPCC report that came out this last week basically called it, I don't know what it was, like red alert or something. It was pretty cataclysmic, basically. So there's that. There's also COVID. There's also this pandemic that we're working our way through as a race or species. I don't like to say race, too loaded these days, but as a species. And I think that we can all see how that's going. I do have my own views about that, and probably just should say it right off the bat that if you're an anti-mask or anti-vaxxer, you probably aren't going to like me very much. So I'm going to try to stay away from getting too far into that, but I do believe in science, and the science is inarguable on that. If you think it is, there are plenty of other videos you can go watch to support your belief system, but anywho, don't want to get too far off the track here. So basically speaking, the message of this is that we are at a particular point in history, I believe, where there are things happening now that were foretold to be coming, to be happening by several prophets and several traditions for thousands of years. And not only by those prophets, the spiritual ones, but the other ones, the prophets of the New Age, who are the scientists. Because the scientists were the prophets in the 60s and 70s, 80s, telling us, if we don't change our ways, the climate is going to be hosed. And we didn't listen to those prophets, and now the climate's looking pretty hosed. We have other scientific prophets who are telling us if we don't get vaccinated, if we don't wear masks, if we don't do what we need to clamp down or to contain the COVID pandemic, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it's going to mutate further. It's going to result in worse mutations, come up with worse variants that are more transmissible, possibly more deadly. And now we're looking at the wave of this Delta variant again. The prophets of the New Age, the scientists, are telling people, but just as in the days of Noah, a lot of people aren't listening. So this topic or idea of judgment, I don't mean this in the sense that God is going to come down and judge you. The judgment that I'm talking about is we each have, in my view, a piece of divine spark in us. Life itself is like the operating system that lies at the root of all living things, whether it's humans, animals, plants. All things that live have basically this operating system, we'll call it for lack of a better term, at the very core of their being. That operating system has basically become corrupted in humans. You can think about it like a computer. I do software development and business analysis in my day job, and so I like to make analogies to computers, so hopefully they make sense to everybody. But an operating system on a computer is very much under the surface. You don't notice it. 99.8% of the time, your computer just works and you love it and things go great. But we all know about the infamous blue screen of death, right? When the computer comes up with this blue screen and all this gobbledygook and something is wrong, something is hosed, and most of us don't know how to fix it. We just know that chances are either your hard drive's gone bad and you need a new one, you need to reinstall Windows, something, but it means something's gone wrong on the operating system. And in the operating system of life, basically, something has gone wrong. Humans seem to have lost contact with what's really most important at a fundamental level. And that's being reflected in what's happening in the world today. And it's not a result of some god, some guy in a robe with lightning bolts casting stuff down on us. It's a direct result of our actions or inactions as a species. On a personal level, there's something kind of similar happening where trying to think of how best to phrase this for people who aren't aware of it, but the great psychiatrist Carl Jung had a concept of the shadow, which is basically the part of us that we don't look at, the part of us that's the dark part, where all the secrets go and the things we don't want to look at, our subconscious motives and so forth. And all human beings, all of us have that. It's just a part and parcel of everything. I believe very much in the principles of yin yang, as above, so below. So basically, there's a little bit of darkness in all light, and there's a little bit of light in all darkness on this plane of materialization. And so humans have a tendency to vilify certain things, vilify certain topics, whatever, or push them away or run away from them, and especially on a personal level. And as such, we build up these fears. We build up these things that terrify us. We're afraid of death. We're afraid of, excuse me, we're afraid of being failures. We're afraid of, and these fears, they drive us in ways that we're not even aware of. And they also limit what we can become. So this judgment that I don't know what the word is, my intuition is about, or however you want to say it, is that each of us are going to be our own judge and jury. In other words, the time is coming when the veil is going to be lifted. And I guess a good analogy would be for those of you who've seen Star Wars movies, when Luke Skywalker is fighting that shadow, that figure in the misty cave or whatever, and he thinks it's Darth Vader, and he takes off the mask and it's him, right? In the movie Excalibur, the one from 1979, there's a similar scene where Lancelot is getting ready to hook up with Guinevere, and he fights someone he thinks is someone else, and he ends up waking up and the sword's in his own side. He's fighting himself. The archetype for that, the concept of that has been written into our modern mythology, and it's a truth. And so what's happening now with the climate crisis, COVID, the breakdown of politics, the heavy partisanship, just everything that's happening, is this reckoning with our shadow side is coming as a species, and will also happen on an individual level, as above, so below. As a species, we're seeing it play out, like again, in the climate, and the different crises that the human species is facing. And on an individual level, we're seeing, well, I think we all know, we've seen some stuff happening. I frequent the UFO Twitter community, and there's a ton of infighting on there lately. It's like rabid rats going after each other. It's not pretty. And it's happening a lot in different venues and areas of life and in social media. On a personal level, we are all going to have that same thing happen to us where we're going to be forced to look inside and confront or acknowledge our shadows. Um, and the important message that I want to get out to everybody is that it's really critical at this time, more than ever, to learn to love yourself, to accept yourself, to forgive yourself, and to look deep inside at those things that you're maybe ashamed of, those things that you're afraid of, those things that, just kind of think to yourself, pretend, even if you're an atheist, just pretend like there is a God, and just role play in your head if you were to go before God, or some jury of whatever, spiritual masters, and they were to judge you, what would their verdict be? Um, and to be honest, it's depending on your religious upbringing. That's probably a really scary thing, especially if you're like a Catholic or something, or in one of those traditions, even Judaism, where it's like, oof, God is really like this super judgy, like, perfectionist, anal retentive guy who's like, you mess up, you're going to hell. But it's important to know on that subject, which is another subject, is that I don't believe in heaven or hell as they're commonly taught in Christian tradition. So this is more of a exercise in we create, or a belief that heaven or hell is basically a state of consciousness, and getting there depends on this part that I'm talking about now, which is facing our shadows, facing those parts of us inside, facing our fears, and integrating them, basically, is the best way to put it. To realize that these things that we see are negative, these whatever demons, these things we're ashamed of, these, whatever crimes we did in the past, these wrongs we did, we are fallible beings. We are like children learning to walk. We make mistakes. We need to forgive ourselves, and we need to accept that shadow side of ourselves on an individual level and on a societal level, because my personal belief and the message I'm getting, and as I said at the beginning of this, that other people are getting, is that this is a very special, unique time in the history of humanity when there is attention being put here that hasn't been for a while. Again, if it was just me thinking or saying this, you could just say this dude's kind of a wacko, whatever. But a number of different people that I've spoken to, actually just this week, are getting that same message from, some people have spirit guides, some people, it's other people in their lives giving them the message, some people it's, aliens, extraterrestrial intelligence, some people it's whatever. For me, I tend to call it source or spirit. We all have that same connection. We all have that direct connection to source. Some of us just hear it a little better because maybe we've been trying to hear it a little better. I've spent the past 30 years studying eschatology, which is basically the study of end times and the final judgment of man. And it's a topic that is not just in Christianity. People would probably be surprised to know that there's eschatology in Buddhism. There's the Hopi prophecies, which I really love. If you haven't gotten a chance, check those out. I have a really good post about them on my website. Ding! So there's, in Judaism, all the different traditions pretty much have the same concept of this judgment, this end of time, this end of days, and it can be really, really scary. But the thing to remember is that there's something better beyond this. The life goes on. This isn't the end of, quote unquote, the world. It's the end of this world, this way that we're doing stuff. But I mean, it kind of needs to end, doesn't it? I mean, it never fails to amaze me that we're in the year 2021 and we still can't feed, clothe, and house everybody on the planet. It amazes me that in the western part of the U.S. there's a huge drought. People are literally running out of water. In the eastern U.S. they're getting so much water They don't know what to do with it. We have billionaires flying to space for fun, but we can't distribute water equally. I mean, does anybody else think about that, or is it just me? It just seems like we've really gone wrong somewhere, like in our priorities and what we do with the technological power that we have. And I believe that materialism and the hard turn taken towards it over the past 100 years especially, but it's been going on for probably 300 or 400 years, that hard turn towards materialism has really gotten us off the track. And if you are a UFO buff or you're into that subject, it's interesting that in the aerial school encounter, that's one of the messages that the kids received, is that to beware of technology, that our technology was going to destroy us, or something to that effect. And other experiencers have gotten that same kind of message. And it's weird that it's kind of looking like that might be the case. So um, I'm not sure how long I've rambled on. I don't even know if this is any good or not. But this is probably going to be the first of what could be more videos. I don't even know if any of this made sense, but the big takeaway would be that if you're worried about what's happening in the world, do some prayer, do some meditation. Don't accept the Christian God of this condemning whatever. Connect with Mother Earth. Connect with the divine feminine. That's another whole topic of its own that I'm very big on, but connect with the feminine energy. It's much softer, it's much more loving and forgiving, and instead of being afraid of that judgment, connect with that and meditate and pray and ask to be given comfort, basically. Ask to have help with acknowledging and integrating your shadow side into your psyche, your consciousness, and know that ultimately everything is going to be fine. Everything is going to be wonderful, because all these physical vehicles that are being transitioned and recycled, the spirit that's inside of them, the life force, it's not going anywhere, because in physics there's I think it's the first law of thermodynamics, which says energy can never be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. Well, think about that. Energy can never be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. Life force, consciousness, is some kind of energy. As much as materialists hate to admit it, it is. And so it's never destroyed. It's just transformed. So remember that all this quote unquote death that's happening, it's really just transformation. And I truly believe that. And people who've had near-death experiences believe that. Buddhists, Gnostics, many other traditions believe that. And so I will leave you with that comfort, that this is a time of great change, but it's also a really wonderful time. We're going to, I believe, and from what other people I'm hearing, we're going to get to see some stuff that's been foretold for hundreds, thousands of years. And for those of us who are weirdos like me and kind of into eschatology and spirituality, it's the best time ever to be alive, because the way human society and the way the human species is going, it just seems like we could do so much better. I don't care what political beliefs you have or what philosophical or ideological, you just gotta think that something's a little off, and it's comforting to know that it's not just going to continue to be this way, that there is hope for something different, and there is. So I hope you got something out of this. I'm planning on doing more of these. I've kind of been compelled to do so. I really don't want to, but the writing thing, I don't seem to be able to get out everything I want to say in the writing anymore. And for whatever reason, again, I've been compelled to do these, so I've planned to follow them up, and hopefully we'll get some feedback on what people would like to hear more about or learn more about. And yeah, we'll go with that. So thank you for taking a little time to listen to my ramblings. I really do appreciate it. I leave you with peace, hope, and like I said, spend a little time in meditation. Connect to your breath, connect to the light, and that comfort of the divine feminine. And I think you'll find that everything is going to be okay ultimately. It really is. So, many blessings.